Eleanor Matthews stood at the departure gate of JFK Airport, her 62-year-old hands clutching a first-class ticket to Nice, France. After 38 years of marriage to Harold, a successful but emotionally distant investment banker, she was finally traveling alone for the first time in her adult life. Harold had passed away 6 months earlier from a sudden heart attack, leaving Eleanor with a substantial inheritance, 2 grown children who lived across the country, and a profound sense that she had never truly lived her own life. The decision to travel to France hadn't been easy. Her daughter Patricia thought she was being reckless, spending money on frivolous trips when she should be settling into a comfortable retirement routine. Her son William was more supportive, but worried about her traveling alone at her age. Eleanor had ignored their concerns, driven by a desperate need to break free from the suffocating routine that had defined her existence for decades. She had always dreamed of visiting Provence, inspired by the paintings of Van Gogh and the romantic descriptions in countless books. Harold had always dismissed such trips as impractical and expensive, preferring their annual vacations to familiar resort destinations. Now, with Harold gone and financial security assured, Eleanor was determined to finally see the lavender fields and medieval villages she had fantasized about for so long. The flight to Nice was Eleanor's first time flying alone, and despite her nervousness, she found herself exhilarated by the independence. She had booked a month-long stay in a small village called Banyuls in the Luberon region, renting a centuries-old stone cottage through a vacation rental service. The photos had shown rustic charm and stunning views of the surrounding countryside. When Eleanor arrived in Banyuls, jet-lagged but excited, she was overwhelmed by the beauty of the ancient village perched on a hillside, surrounded by vineyards and olive groves. The cottage was more charming than the photos had suggested, with thick stone walls, exposed wooden beams, and windows that looked out over rolling hills dotted with cypress trees. Her first week was spent simply adjusting to the pace of village life and exploring the local markets. Eleanor had studied French in college but hadn't used it in decades, so communication was initially challenging. The villagers were polite but somewhat reserved toward the obviously American tourist with her guidebooks and camera. It was during her second week that Eleanor first encountered Marcus Dubois. She had gotten lost trying to find a hiking trail and was standing at a crossroads, consulting her map with growing frustration, when a tall, elegant black man approached her. He appeared to be in his early 60s, with salt and pepper hair and kind brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Excusez-moi, madam," he said in accented English. "You appear to need assistance?" Eleanor looked up, surprised both by his offer of help and his use of English. "Oh yes, thank you. I'm trying to find the trail to the Petit Luberon, but I think I've taken a wrong turn somewhere." Marcus smiled warmly. "Ah, you are not far off. But the signage here can be confusing even for locals. I am Marcus Dubois. I live nearby and was just heading in that direction myself. Perhaps you would allow me to show you the way." Eleanor hesitated for a moment. Harold had always warned her about talking to strangers while traveling, but something about Marcus's gentle manner put her at ease. "That's very kind. I'm Eleanor Matthews." As they walked together along the winding path, Eleanor learned that Marcus was originally from Senegal, but had lived in France for over 30 years. He was a retired literature professor who had taught at the University of Aix-en-Provence, and now spent his time writing poetry and tending to his small vineyard. His English was excellent, refined by years of academic work and international conferences. "And what brings you to our little corner of Provence?" Marcus asked as they paused to admire a valley vista. Eleanor found herself sharing more than she had intended. She told him about Harold's death, her children's concerns about her traveling alone, and her lifelong dream of seeing this region. Marcus listened attentively, occasionally asking thoughtful questions that showed he was genuinely interested in her story. "It is never too late to pursue dreams," Marcus said as they reached the trailhead. I came to France as a young man with nothing but hope and determination. Sometimes life's greatest adventures begin when we think our story is already written. When they parted ways, Eleanor felt more energized than she had in months. Marcus had given her detailed recommendations for local attractions and restaurants, writing them down in his elegant handwriting on a piece of paper torn from a small notebook he carried. Over the following days, Eleanor found herself hoping to encounter Marcus again. She visited the sites he had recommended and was delighted to discover that his suggestions were perfect: hidden viewpoints with spectacular vistas, small family restaurants serving incredible regional cuisine, and historical sites that weren't overrun with tourists. A week later, Eleanor was browsing the weekly market in Apt when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Ah, the American explorer. How are you finding our recommendations?" Eleanor turned to see Marcus approaching with a basket full of fresh vegetables and a warm smile. She felt her heart skip in a way it hadn't for decades. "They've been wonderful. That little restaurant in Roussillon was absolutely magical." "I am pleased to hear it. I was just finishing my shopping. Perhaps you would join me for coffee? There is a lovely cafe nearby, and I would enjoy hearing about your adventures." They spent 2 hours at the cafe, conversation flowing effortlessly between them. Marcus shared stories of his childhood in Dakar, his journey to France as a young graduate student, and his love affair with Provençal culture. Eleanor found herself opening up about her marriage, her children, and the sense of lost identity she had experienced after years of defining herself solely as Harold's wife and the children's mother. "You speak as though your life is ending," Marcus observed gently. "But it seems to me that perhaps it is just beginning." Eleanor felt a flutter of something she couldn't quite identify. "I'm 62 years old, Marcus. Most people would say my life is largely behind me." "Most people," Marcus replied with a smile, "have very limited imaginations. Age is not a limitation unless we allow it to be." Their friendship developed gradually over Eleanor's remaining weeks in Banyuls. Marcus introduced her to his circle of friends, artists, writers, and other transplants who had found their way to this corner of France from various parts of the world. Eleanor was surprised to find herself welcomed warmly into this bohemian community, her American perspective appreciated rather than merely tolerated. Marcus invited her to poetry readings at his home, where local writers gathered monthly to share their work. Eleanor was enchanted by the creative energy of these gatherings and found herself attempting to write poetry for the first time since college. Marcus encouraged her efforts, offering gentle critiques and suggesting she explore themes from her own experience. They took long walks together through the countryside, Marcus sharing his extensive knowledge of local history and botany. Eleanor learned to identify different varieties of herbs growing wild along the paths and discovered that she had a natural eye for photography, capturing images that Marcus praised for their artistic sensitivity. As Eleanor's month-long stay neared its end, she found herself dreading the return to her empty house in Connecticut. The life she had built there seemed colorless and meaningless compared to the richness she had discovered in Provence. More troubling was the realization that leaving Marcus would be genuinely painful. The evening before her scheduled departure, Marcus invited Eleanor for dinner at his home, a beautifully restored farmhouse surrounded by vineyards. He had prepared a traditional Senegalese meal, explaining each dish and its cultural significance. The conversation was more intimate than their previous encounters, touching on deeper themes of loss, renewal, and the courage required to change one's life. "Eleanor," Marcus said as they sat on his terrace under a canopy of stars, "I hope you will forgive an old man's directness, but I must tell you that your presence here has been a gift to me. I had thought my capacity for new connections was diminished, but you have proven me wrong." Eleanor felt tears welling in her eyes. "Marcus, this month has been the most alive I've felt in years. You've shown me a world I never knew existed, not just here in France, but within myself." "Then perhaps," Marcus said carefully, "you might consider extending your stay. There is no urgency to return to Connecticut immediately, is there? Eleanor's practical mind immediately began listing all the reasons why this was impossible. Her house, her responsibilities, what people would think. But a stronger voice inside her asked why any of those things mattered more than this unexpected happiness she had found. I could change my flight, she said slowly. My return ticket is flexible. Marcus's smile was radiant. Then perhaps we might explore what this connection between us could become. Eleanor extended her stay by another month, then another. She moved from the rental cottage to a small apartment in the village, ostensibly to save money, but really to be closer to Marcus. Their relationship deepened from friendship to something more profound, though they moved slowly, both mindful of their age and the cultural complexities of their situation. Eleanor discovered that Marcus had never married, having devoted himself to his academic career and poetry. He had had relationships over the years, but had never found someone who understood both his Senegalese heritage and his adopted French identity. In Eleanor, he found someone whose own journey of self-discovery resonated with his experiences as a cultural bridge builder. 6 months after Eleanor's original departure date, she and Marcus were married in a small ceremony in the village church, attended by their circle of friends and Eleanor's children, who had flown in from America. Patricia remained skeptical of her mother's midlife crisis, but William was charmed by Marcus and impressed by the transformation he saw in his mother. "I've never seen you this happy, Mom," William told her after the ceremony. "You seem like a completely different person." "I think I'm finally the person I was always meant to be," Eleanor replied. The newlyweds settled into Marcus's farmhouse, which Eleanor helped renovate with some of Harold's inheritance. She established an art studio in one of the outbuildings and began seriously pursuing photography and painting. Marcus published his first collection of poetry in English, translated from his French works, with Eleanor serving as his editor and collaborator. Their life together was rich with intellectual and creative pursuits. They traveled to Senegal, where Eleanor met Marcus's extended family and experienced the warmth of African hospitality. She was particularly moved by the strength and dignity of the women in Marcus's family, finding role models for aging gracefully and purposefully. The most surprising development came during Eleanor's second year in France. At 64, she had long assumed her childbearing years were over. When she began experiencing unusual fatigue and nausea, she initially attributed it to adjusting to a new diet and lifestyle. It was Marcus who gently suggested she see a doctor. The news that Eleanor was pregnant sent shockwaves through their social circle and family. At 64 and 65 respectively, Eleanor and Marcus were about to become first-time parents. The pregnancy was considered high risk due to Eleanor's age, but comprehensive medical care and her excellent health made the doctors cautiously optimistic. Eleanor's children were stunned by the news. Patricia worried about the health risks and questioned her mother's judgment, while William was more supportive but concerned about the practical challenges of parenting at their age. Marcus's friends in Senegal, however, celebrated the news, as older parenthood was not uncommon in their culture and was often seen as a blessing. The pregnancy proceeded more smoothly than anyone had dared hope. Eleanor worked with specialists in Nice and Marseille, receiving state-of-the-art prenatal care. She maintained an active lifestyle, continuing her daily walks and yoga practice while adjusting her diet and activities as recommended by her medical team. Marcus was devoted and attentive throughout the pregnancy, reading extensively about geriatric pregnancies and accompanying Eleanor to every medical appointment. His academic background helped him understand the medical literature, and he became an advocate for Eleanor's care, ensuring she received the best possible attention. The baby was born after a carefully managed delivery at a hospital in Marseille. Eleanor delivered a healthy daughter they named Amara, meaning grace in Arabic and eternal in Sanskrit, a name that reflected both their gratitude and their hopes for this unexpected gift. Parenthood at their age brought unique challenges and unexpected joys. Eleanor and Marcus had energy levels different from younger parents, but they also brought patience, wisdom, and financial stability that many younger couples lacked. Their life experience allowed them to approach parenting with perspective and confidence. Amara grew up trilingual, speaking English with Eleanor, French in the community, and learning Wolof from Marcus's Senegalese family during their annual visits. She was a bright, confident child who benefited from the attention of two devoted parents and an extended community of artistic, intellectual adults who treated her as a welcome addition to their gatherings. Eleanor's transformation from suburban Connecticut widow to Provençal mother and artist was complete but ongoing. She exhibited her photography and paintings in local galleries, with her work focusing on themes of cultural fusion and later life renewal. Her pieces resonated with viewers who saw in them hope for their own possibilities of reinvention. Marcus continued his writing, now incorporating themes of fatherhood and cross-cultural family life into his poetry. His work gained international attention, particularly in academic circles interested in post-colonial literature and immigrant experiences. He and Eleanor collaborated on a book about their unusual love story, which was published in both French and English. The financial aspect of their situation remained comfortable thanks to Harold's inheritance and Marcus's professor's pension. Eleanor had invested wisely, ensuring that Amara would have educational opportunities and that she and Marcus could provide for their daughter's future while continuing to support their community through various charitable activities. Health concerns were always present given their ages, but both Eleanor and Marcus maintained active lifestyles and received excellent medical care. They established comprehensive insurance policies and legal arrangements to ensure Amara would be cared for regardless of what the future might bring. The village of Banyuls embraced this unusual family completely. Amara became a beloved local child, and Eleanor and Marcus were respected members of the community. Their story challenged assumptions about appropriate life choices and demonstrated that love and family could flourish outside conventional timelines. Eleanor's relationship with her American children evolved over time. Patricia eventually came to appreciate her mother's happiness and was charmed by her half-sister despite the 40-year age gap. William visited regularly and developed a close relationship with Marcus, appreciating having an intellectual father figure after years of Harold's emotional distance. The cultural richness of Amara's upbringing was extraordinary. She experienced Provençal festivals, Senegalese celebrations, and American holidays with equal enthusiasm. Her artwork and school projects reflected this multicultural background, earning recognition from teachers and peers who admired her unique perspective. Educational choices for Amara were carefully considered. Eleanor and Marcus selected schools that valued diversity and creativity while ensuring academic excellence. They supplemented formal education with travel, exposing Amara to various cultures and encouraging her natural curiosity about the world. As Amara entered her teenage years, Eleanor and Marcus faced the reality of being elderly parents of an adolescent. At 77 and 78 respectively, they relied increasingly on their strong community support network and Amara's own maturity to navigate this challenging phase. The age gap occasionally created tension, particularly when Amara's friends had grandparents younger than her parents. However, Eleanor and Marcus's energy and engagement with contemporary culture helped bridge generational differences. They embraced technology, social media, and current trends to stay connected with their daughter's world. Eleanor's artistic career flourished throughout these years. Her work was featured in exhibitions across Europe and America, with critics praising her unique perspective on aging, motherhood, and cultural integration. She became a sought-after speaker at conferences on women's issues and late-life development. Marcus's literary reputation continued to grow. His poetry collections were translated into multiple languages, and he was invited to international festivals and academic symposiums. His work exploring themes of identity, belonging, and family across cultures resonated with global audiences. The couple also became advocates for non-traditional families and later-life parenting. They participated in documentaries and research studies, sharing their experiences to help others considering similar paths. Their story inspired numerous articles and books about aging, love, and family formation. Community involvement remained central to their lives. Eleanor and Marcus supported local artists, established scholarship funds for young people, and contributed to preservation efforts for the region's cultural heritage. Their philanthropy reflected their commitment to giving back to the community that had welcomed them so warmly. Now, at 80 and 81, Eleanor and Marcus continue to thrive in their Provençal paradise. Amara, now a young woman herself, speaks of her unusual family with pride and gratitude. She understands that her parents' love story is unique and appreciates the courage it took for them to choose happiness over convention. Eleanor often reflects on the chain of events that led her from grief-stricken Connecticut widow to fulfilled artist, wife, and mother in France. The decision to take that first solo trip to Provence had seemed like a small act of rebellion, but it had transformed her entire existence. The cottage where she first stayed is now owned by friends, and Eleanor occasionally visits it to remember those first tentative steps toward her new life. She marvels at how different she was then, tentative, uncertain, defining herself primarily through her relationships to others rather than her own dreams and capabilities. Her photography studio, filled with images from their travels and daily life, tells the story of a woman who discovered her artistic voice in her 60s. The walls display photos of Senegalese markets, Provençal landscapes, family celebrations, and intimate moments that capture the beauty of an unconventional life fully lived. Marcus's study remains his sanctuary for writing, though he now often includes Amara in his creative process, encouraging her own literary interests. His latest poetry collection explores themes of legacy and mortality, celebrating the unexpected gifts that life had brought him in his later years. Eleanor's story challenges every assumption about appropriate behavior for widowed women, proper timing for new relationships, and the possibilities for happiness in later life. Her journey from conventional Connecticut matron to Provençal artist and mother demonstrates that reinvention is possible at any age for those brave enough to pursue it. The love story that began with a chance encounter on a hiking trail continues to inspire others to remain open to unexpected possibilities. Eleanor and Marcus's marriage proves that deep connection can develop between people from vastly different backgrounds when approached with openness, respect, and genuine curiosity about each other's experiences. Their daughter Amara represents the beautiful possibilities that emerge when people are willing to step outside conventional boundaries. Her existence challenges societal norms about appropriate parenting ages, while demonstrating that children can thrive in families that prioritize love, stability, and cultural richness over conformity to expected patterns. As the sun sets over the vineyards that surround their home, Eleanor and Marcus often sit together on their terrace, watching Amara work in the garden or pursue her own artistic projects. They marvel at the life they've built together and the legacy they're creating, not just through their daughter, but through their example of courage in pursuing happiness despite social expectations and their own advanced ages. Eleanor's transformation from duty-bound suburban widow to fulfilled artist, wife, and mother in Provence represents one of literature's most inspiring examples of later life renewal. Her story continues to encourage others to consider that their most meaningful chapters might still be unwritten, waiting for the courage to turn the page and begin again.